In the rush of a crowded city where thousands walk past each other without a second glance, one elderly woman stood still, lost, invisible, and forgotten. No ID, no phone, not even her own name she could recall. People passed. Some glanced. Most didn't stop until a stranger did. But what if that stranger wasn't truly a stranger at all? What if their paths were always meant to cross? This is the story of a forgotten woman and the granddaughter she never meant to find, but who had never stopped looking for her. What unfolded next changed more than one life. It awakened a memory buried by time and a love stronger than loss. There are moments that break quietly through the noise of ordinary life, small, overlooked details that hold the weight of everything that matters. On a bitter January afternoon in the outskirts of Holbrook, a teenager named Caleb Rourke pedaled his mother's old bicycle through frozen slush and wind sharp enough to crack skin. His knuckles, blue with cold, gripped the handlebars as he balanced a worn canvas bag filled with packages strapped to the back of the bike. At 18, Caleb had already learned how to stretch a sandwich into 2 meals, how to decode eviction notices without panicking, and how to ignore people who looked at him like he didn't belong. The day's final delivery was a thick manila envelope bound for a glass office on the wealthier side of town. If he made it before the building closed, he could cover another week's rent at the boarding house. If he didn't, he'd be sleeping behind the convenience store again. But fate has a cruel way of interrupting plans, not with dramatic disasters, but with small, quiet detours. That detour came in the form of a hunched woman sitting alone at a bus stop bench. Caleb might have ignored her too. He had places to be, a life barely hanging on. But something made him brake hard and squint through the sleet. She looked too thin for her coat, her silver hair peeking from under a knitted hat. Her face was turned toward the road, her eyes searching for something that wasn't coming. Number. Buses had run this route since last week's storm knocked out part of the schedule. Caleb knew that. Everyone did. He approached slowly. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She blinked up at him, startled but not scared. Her voice was soft and clipped like an old music box winding down. "Waiting for the 14. My daughter will be at the stop near the bakery." Caleb hesitated. She had a small pendant around her neck, barely visible under her scarf. He leaned closer. It was engraved with a name and phone number worn by time. Caleb knew what that meant. She didn't remember where she was, or maybe even who she was. The choice was brutal in its simplicity. Finish the delivery and stay indoors another week. Or help a woman no one else had even seen. He gently asked for her name. "I think it's Margot, but my head feels fuzzy today." That was enough. He looked back at the road, then to the woman, and sighed. "All right, Margot. Let's get you home." The wheels of Caleb's bike turned slowly through slush-streaked streets. Margot balanced behind him, arms looped loosely around his waist. She didn't speak much, just hummed low and steady like a tune from a life she couldn't quite recall. The roads were quiet. Most people were home, warm, safe. But Caleb, with every push of the pedal, felt the weight of a decision that had changed his day and perhaps something far greater. He stopped outside a corner store, the one with the cracked window and flickering sign where he often exchanged deliveries for day-old food. "I know someone inside," he told Margot gently. Let me ask if he's seen you before." Margot nodded, her eyes darting across the unfamiliar neighborhood. Inside, Mr. Fletcher glanced up from behind the counter, recognition flickering. "She's been around," he muttered. "Comes in asking about a daughter. Always the bakery stop. Doesn't cause trouble. Folks ignore her." Caleb's jaw tensed. "She's lost. She needs help." Mr. Fletcher shrugged, reaching beneath the counter. "Then you're the first to care." He handed Caleb 2 sandwiches wrapped in brown paper. Caleb accepted them, nodded his thanks, and left barely feeling the cold anymore. He sat beside Margot on the bench outside, offering her one. She took it with delicate fingers, her voice merely a whisper, "You're kind." "My Harold used to say kindness was a gift, not a habit." Caleb paused. "Harold your husband?" She blinked. "I think so. Or my brother. It's hard to hold on to things these days. I just remember warmth. And music. My daughter played piano. Or maybe I did." Her words tumbled like glass fragile, unsure. Caleb reached into his bag and pulled out a crumpled city map. He circled the bakery on the edge of town, the place she kept mentioning. "We'll go here. Maybe someone will know you." She smiled. "That sounds nice. You're a good boy, Caleb." He froze. "How do you know my name?" But she didn't answer, only looked ahead as if something far off had spoken through her. The bakery stood on the corner like a memory suspended in time paint-chipped, windows fogged by the heat inside. Caleb pushed open the door, the scent of vanilla and yeast thick in the air. Bells above jingled faintly, drawing a few glances from those inside. Margot clutched his arm like a child on her first day of school. Behind the counter, a woman in her late 50s looked up. Her eyes fell on Margot, and her hand froze mid-gesture. "May I help you?" she asked, voice measured but curious. Caleb hesitated. She ... might be someone you know." Margot stepped forward, eyes locked on the display of pastries, then on the sign beside the register. Est, 1963, Hope's Hearth. She pressed a hand to the glass case and whispered, "I used to bake the raspberry tarts, ... just like those." The woman behind the counter blinked. "What did you say?" "Raspberry tarts." "I added lemon zest to the crust. Secret trick." The woman gasped. Only one person ever knew that. A pause fell over the room. The tension felt like it could snap under a whisper. "My name's Elise," the woman said. "My mother. She vanished from here over a year ago." The home said. She wondered. Said she couldn't remember names or faces. But she remembered ... lemon zest. Margot's eyes welled up. "Elise ... my little songbird." They embraced like two puzzle pieces long separated, one trembling, the other already crying. Caleb stepped back, his breath visible in the bakeries. Warmth. He watched quietly, his hands still smudged with city grime, his heart pounding with something he didn't yet have words for. Outside, the sky had turned a pale silver. The bakery lights dimmed into a late afternoon hue. Elise had closed early just this once. She sat between Caleb and Margot at the corner table beneath the faded portrait of Hope's Hearth's founder, whose likeness now bore an uncanny resemblance. To Margot's calm smile, they sipped hot tea steeped in cinnamon. Bark and dried oranges, an old recipe Margot said she remembered teaching her own grandmother. Elise hung onto her every word, caught between disbelief and awe. while Caleb mostly stayed quiet, nodding and occasionally wiping his eyes when neither noticed. "You really don't remember everything?" Elise asked softly. Margot shook her head. "Some things feel like postcards soaked in water. Faces blend, time slips ... But when I saw your face, when I smelled the tart crust, I knew something still held on." "Then I'll keep being that something," Elise whispered. Outside, the bakery's neon flickered on, casting a soft glow across the frost-laced sidewalk. Passersby peeked in curiously, unaware of the small reunion inside. Margot noticed one child tapping on the glass, waving. He reminded her of someone, maybe a grandson, maybe just the boy who used to deliver flour from across town. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled without trying. Elise brought out an old journal, one she'd kept with hope and bitterness in equal parts. She placed it in front of Margot and said, "Help me write what's missing." They spent the next hours filling in gaps, what Margot could remember, what Elise had learned. When Margot got tired, Caleb read aloud, his voice soft and warm, keeping her present. They were no longer strangers tethered by chance. They were a family rekindled by grace. Margot's presence became the heartbeat of the town, subtle, steady, and unexpectedly vital. Elise found herself glancing to the corner table whenever the bakery filled up, expecting Margot's gentle nod or the way she would quietly realign crooked salt shakers, as if restoring small pieces of order to a chaotic world. Though the doctors said her memory might fade again, might even slip away entirely. Some days were brilliant. On one such day, Margot stood behind the bakery counter beside Elise, awkwardly but lovingly tying on an apron that no longer fit the same way it had years before. They made apple cinnamon tarts together. Her hands remembered what her mind could not. "It's like my bones know this," she laughed, flour dusting the tip of her nose. One afternoon, Caleb returned from the city with an envelope in hand. Inside was a legal declaration Margot would be added as part owner of Hope's Hearth. Elise had insisted. Ownership? Margot chuckled. "I barely remember which drawer has the spatulas." "You remembered me," Elise said simply. "That's enough." Time passed. They framed the original business license Margot had filed years ago under her maiden name, back when the dream of a bakery was just scribbles on napkins and whispered prayers. On her less lucid days, Margot called Elise by the wrong name, sometimes, confusing her with Elise's mother or even herself. But she always smiled when Elise played a certain song one her mother had used to sing while baking. That melody never left her. In spring, a small festival was held outside the bakery. The town gathered to celebrate Hope's Hearth's anniversary. Margot was seated near the front, wrapped in a quilt that Elise had sewn, the bakery's logo embroidered in one corner. Caleb delivered a short speech, choking up midway. Elise stood last. "I used to think being forgotten was the worst thing that could happen," she said, voice clear despite the wind. "But I learned something much harder and much more powerful. That forgiveness can bloom even in the coldest winters. That memory isn't just what we recall, but what we choose to carry forward." She turned to Margot. "And you, Grandma, you came back." The crowd was silent, breath held. Margot blinked, looking up. And then smiled. Elise stepped down and took her hand, the bakery behind them glowing like a memory that had finally been allowed to rest.